What is going on, everyone? This is Dr. Josh Funk, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Zach Baker, and I have got with me Anthony Iannorino on as our guest today. And this is actually the first time that we have had him on the podcast, but it is probably not the first time you have seen him affiliated with Rehab to Perform or R2P Academy. For those that do not know, Anthony started off his career at Rehab to Perform as one of our physical therapists, also did a clinical rotation with us, and then as he has progressed through his career, he's continued to stay involved with us through R2P Academy, both as a lecturer, but one of the main roles that both him and Jared take lead on within the company is helping to frame the content for the courses that we teach and the overall material that we're delivering from both as a macro level that we all get to contribute to, and then the two of them get to dive a little bit further into the weeds and really bring the courses to life. And then Mike and myself and the others on staff, we get the luxury of letting them do a lot of the dirty work and then just distributing that information. So, and I know we have not gotten to touch base in a while, so I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Likewise, Zach. I mean, anytime we get a chance to talk, microphone or not, I'll always take the opportunity. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, and we are going to touch later today just about your current role with the Washington Wizards as a performance physical therapist. But if you don't mind, can we kind of start back at the early phases and let's kind of paint a picture of how you got there, and let's rewind back to the beginning. What really sparked your interest in the field of physical therapy, and how did you even get going down that route as a career choice?
Yeah, I like this question because I actually really started like full steam ahead path going towards strength conditioning. And so it's kind of funny that the story is like kind of the average story for your typical strength coach you hear all the time, like, you know, underpowered athlete, average, who kind of like had to find any sort of edge they could through working harder and working smarter. So like end up finding the weight room and fall in love with the training process as you find that it kind of helps you individually achieve some of your athletic goals. And then I fell in love with the coaching side as well. So really it got me into, you know, how do I help other athletes achieve and be better? And that was kind of hitting me at a time where I was, you know, really falling in love with anatomy and physiology and mechanics and everything I was learning in high school, which kind of turned the weight room into a lab to express that scientific side for me. So that really got me excited about the field. I went into, you know, kind of a group fitness personal training side first, and then got involved in the collegiate weight room at University of Dayton, where I attended college. From there, did some internships in the strength conditioning field. Got exposed to some really excellent mentors at places like Don Scott Strength Conditioning in Columbus, Ohio, Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning in Boston. And during those times, I kind of got the itch for more of the, you know, rehab and prehab side of things, and just asking more questions about why injuries happen. How do we get athletes out of some of these patterns that might be putting them at greater risk for injury, et cetera. So at that time, I started really looking at physical therapy school, and I took an intro to physical therapy class my senior year of undergrad, and it exposed me to a lot of the concepts, a lot of things we get in PT school. And in addition, at the same time, I did an adaptive physical activity course where I ended up working with a kid with cerebral palsy for an entire semester. And it kind of just showed me an expression of movement that was in a way we can interact with patients different than just kind of, you know, barbells, kettlebells, turf, agility, you know, change of direction, speed, and showed me the spectrum of movement that really got me excited and opened up a different world, and showed me how, you know, like, I think if I didn't go in this physical therapy route, I would have a scratch I couldn't itch. So decided to go at an extra 3 years to get that doctorate of physical therapy. And sure, we're going to talk about the rest of the path, but ended up at Rehab Perform, and the rest is kind of history there.
Yeah, and you had mentioned you have kind of that, you know, almost cliche way of getting into it where you hear a lot of people in the field. It's, you know, I had an athletic background, or I got injured, or they did something that kind of piqued their interest pretty intuitively or organically. But I think oftentimes we really downplay these early experiences that you had just mentioned and how much they truly shape the remainder of our career as physical therapists. I mean, you were fortunate enough to have some tremendous experiences in undergrad in both a formal standpoint and some others that you just went out and pursued and made the connections on your own. But I would have to imagine a lot of those early interactions, either the people that you were able to learn from and work with or work under, or some of the concepts that you were introduced early onto from just, general strength conditioning principles and program design and interaction, patient or client interaction in a small group, large group, or one-on-one setting. Those are things that unfortunately you don't get a lot of in PT school. And I don't want to say that you don't get exposed to it, but you have a very specific curriculum that you need to cover in PT school in a relatively small amount of time. I know 3 years seems long, but when you try to cram that all into a 3-year curriculum, you only have so many different ways that you can go with that. So I'm glad that you shared everything that you had done prior to PT school, because I think if anybody is a student or a prospective PT student, one of the best things that you can do as you are going through the application process is just fully immerse yourself in the environment that you think you want to be in. One, because you may realize that I don't actually want to be in this environment. Or two, as you go through PT school, you're going to be thanking your younger self for taking the time, because you're going to appreciate that you just don't get the depth in PT school, not only in the sports field, but you have a lot of different settings in PT school that you have to cover. So you become more of that generalist as opposed to that specialist. And you had kind of taken us up to PT school. We were fortunate enough to have you as a student. For those that are listening, Anthony was actually the first PT student that I ever took. And I'm surprised he's actually made it through PT school and has gone on to do what he did in spite of his time with Josh and myself. But can you touch on coming out of PT school? Why did you think that starting at R2P, and I don't even want to make this about, starting with us as a company, but why did you think going to a sports-oriented outpatient clinic was a good starting spot for you? I guess what were some things just on your personal or career checklist that you wanted to make sure you got exposure to early on? And then after you touch on that, can you talk a little bit just about, as our company was growing and you being a part of that growing company, how did your roles and responsibilities evolve?
Yeah, sure. I think going through school, I think we're kind of accumulating experiences, right? So we're accumulating experiences in the classroom, accumulating experiences when we shadow, and ultimately we're accumulating experiences on our clinical rotations. So I was lucky enough to kind of find you guys by chance and get an experience to understand some of the company principles and identities very early on while they were still being formed. But what I remember just palpably, finding was that the beginner's mindset, the desire to learn, and then just the humility, but also just the intense passion for what we were doing is something that drew me in. I knew it was a culture I wanted to be around, because when you're around people like that, an environment like that, there's no choice but to get better and to grow with and around people in a company like that. So when I start talking to students now about like a first job, it's funny, I kind of downplay the importance of a first job, first off, because I talk about this in terms of like, training. If I start a new weight training program I've never trained before, really any program is going to get you stronger. I think it's pretty similar in your profession. You need reps. We need to be getting into a situation where we're not, like being, constantly under our clinical instructor. We're out on our own and we have to make decisions. And I think anywhere you're doing that, as long as the company is supportive of giving you the time and space and mentorship to grow, I think it's going to be a valuable place to get reps. But something I'll talk with new students about is to make sure they're either prioritizing a chance to get a unique experience, prioritize the location and lifestyle, or prioritize the financial gain, and trying to find a mix of those things, but not taking a job that's weak in all of those aspects. So I think the number one thing is again finding a place that they're going to support those reps. They're going to give you the time and space and the sounding boards to reflect on those things, to truly take those reps you're getting and to be able to reflect and grow off of them. So I knew in my time as a student at R2P, that was something that I gained, and something I knew would continue with just the people and the people that they were continuing to bring in.
And
would just help facilitate.
Yeah, I love what you had just mentioned about those three things: a unique experience, the location, and just either the convenience or enjoyment of the lifestyle you can live, or the financial gain. And I think the one thing you have to consider with that as a new grad is the opportunity I'm having with this job opportunity. How much is this phase of my life going to play into that? And is this the only chance I'm going to have this unique opportunity? Or is it one that I could have 15 years from now as well? How relevant is landing a high dollar job in my first couple of years out of school? Or do I know I've got the potential to do that later on, and I may need to prioritize some of these experiences or locations? From a location standpoint, do I have the flexibility from a personal and a professional standpoint to be on the go, or do I need to be rooted in an area? I love those three things that you hit on. I think that's something that intuitively that's always been in my mind. I've never been able to articulate it that way. So I'm glad that you presented that. And getting back to you, can you talk about, you found your kind of landing spot with us early on, and then you came into the company in a pretty unique time. Frederick was a fully staffed location. But we were getting to the point where we needed to make some decisions as a company as what does it look like moving forward? Do we stay as a clinic of one? Do we go to a multiple clinic environment? And you were kind of coming on board right during that time. Can you touch on just how your time with us evolved, where you started, where you progressed to, and ultimately, before you ended up with the Wizards, what your role was?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say this: from day one of my clinical rotation at R2P, like, it was very unique. So,
That's just because I wear basketball shorts every day. That's the only unique thing about it.
The baggy shorts, treating off a turf field, and any of all those things, painting walls. No, so like what I wanted, and we're again coming back to like unique experience. Like, what I got as a student is I got an environment where I wasn't just seeing 15, 16 patients a day and documenting. I was getting that experience, but I was seeing 2-3 patients, and I would jump in, Josh's truck, and we go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a Rotary Club meeting. I was going and kind of helping, he was bouncing ideas off me to help design the new facility we're building. So I saw an opportunity where, wow, like, my opinion's being listened to and respected in a way that's I know I'm going to have an ability to help this company grow and a voice in that. And it's something where coming in and being mentored, not just on the clinical side of things, but on the business side of things and getting that experience, I knew that was something that was going to be invaluable to me. So coming in and taking that initial job, like, number one, we just had a great staff of people because, Jared Boyd and Caleb Fatzinger had just been hired right before I came in. So we had a really great team at Frederick, but I also knew we had growth potential, and I'd likely be helping to open up the clinic in Germantown. So I knew there would be kind of a entrepreneurial, or what like Josh referred to as an intrapreneurial opportunities. And that's really what I got at R2P, was not just like the opportunity, but the push to develop new things, to think outside the box, to create different types of products or online offerings, or ultimately like us forming R2P Academy was a way that like I got pushed out of my comfort zone. I think anyone can reflect on who's worked, with or for Josh, is like, he's going to do that for you. And it's something where it might be uncomfortable at the start. It might be something that you don't want to do, but it's something that I look back now and I was like, wow, I would have never done that unless I was pushed to do these things, or I was encouraged to do these things, or the culture around me was showing, hey, we're going to be more than just, clinicians who are going to treat patients and go home. We're going to look to try to, change some of the culture of healthcare. And we're going to look to try to just really be in the community and try to be a community hub. So for me, coming and moving to a new place, that was awesome, because through the job, I was able to create community where I was living. Through the job, I was able to kind of learn more about business, learn more about the healthcare environment as a whole, and grow in more ways than just clinically. So to me, reflecting back on where I'm at now, that was invaluable. And those are some of the things that like I knew my gut was telling me I wanted to be involved with, but you never actually know where it's going to go. But I think when you choose to grow together with people that have similar principles and similar, identity and goals, good things are typically going to happen.
No, and that was a very exciting time when you came on and in those years following. And to kind of summarize, Ant came on as a staff physical therapist, as a new graduate. We had opened up the Germantown location, which he played a pivotal role in helping us open that. Him and Caleb went down there and got that location up and running, which going from one clinic to two clinics as a company is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of unknown involved with that, and he helped navigate those waters, and then ended up going down to Bethesda and opening that location for us, and serving as the site director there, not only treating patients, but playing a role in the onboarding and orienting of staff, some of the administrative and business consults and decision makings that go hand in hand with discussing with Josh on a regular basis. So, all of those things within R2P, and then also being a founding member of R2P Academy and trying to create this online and in-person educational presence. And we've had the kind of the pleasure of being able to speak and lecture together through the academy in the early phases. And it's been fun to just watch each other grow and the company grow. And, you were my first student, but I always tell people I learned just as much from you both as a student and as a clinician as what I've been able to. I don't know if I've taught you anything, but I've shown you a good bit of stuff that I struggled with and did wrong throughout my career to kind of pave that path for you. But I honestly don't know if I know the story. Can you tell everybody, how did the Wizards opportunity even present itself? And what was some of the considerations that you had going through your mind, being in a kind of up-and-coming company, but then having this opportunity to get into professional sports?
Yeah, honestly, it was kind of a right place, right time, right opportunity thing where I think professional sports was something I was always curious about. It was something that I think just gave a different dynamic and a different route for growth than what a clinic environment would do. And something that, just gave time and logistics and resources that was going to push my brain in a different way. But it was something that I didn't know if I was going to, just with my personal life scenario and, my wife and I living in DC and her working in DC and having, a career trajectory of her own where I was going to want to look and, move for a job. So I got connected with, some with the organization at the right time when they were looking for someone with really the skill set that I had cultivated and grown over my career at that point, kind of a hybrid strength coach, physical therapist, someone who could handle some long-term rehab elements as well. So it was something where honestly, it was kind of like the serendipitous timing where that worked out. And it was an opportunity where you talked before, it's like, is this an opportunity I'm going to be able to do later? Is this something that's going to come back up in my career? And like when I reflected on whether it was something I should do or not, the answer was like, I think I need to do this now. Something where it's can be very hard to get your feet in professional sports. It's something that, with family scenarios and everything else can be difficult to navigate at certain times in your life. So it was kind of felt like a something I needed to do now. Additionally, from a clinical growth standpoint, it felt like, kind of come back to that training analogy, it kind of felt like I needed a new stimulus to kind of reach a different peak in how I was learning and in my career and some of the things I was thinking about and wanted to grow with. And this really served to be that. So I think it's one of those things where getting into jobs like this certainly takes luck and timing. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's one of those things where you can kind of look back over when you're interviewing or when you're reflecting back on, was I ready for this, or what skill sets put me in a good place to do this? And you kind of realize that, like some of the decisions you make, some of the people you were around, the mentors you had have really kind of all come at the right place and right time to put you in a place where you were ready for that opportunity when it came. And there's always going to be growing pains and things you need to learn in a new environment. But did you set a good foundation to be the right person to grow? Did you have a growth mindset and build the ability to really learn and reflect throughout the beginning parts of your career to be able to be adaptable in a new setting? So I think that stuff's all pivotal. And just, again, knowing if it's the right time, knowing if I have enough reps to step into a new challenging and high pressure situation. And is it just the right time for myself and my family? And all those stars seem to align at the right time. In the right city where I didn't have to move and I could take the metro to work. So where it was just I just feel very blessed and fortunate to have had the opportunity, and kind of still pinch myself every day that it happened, and I get to do this for a job every day.
Yeah, you'd mentioned struggling with that question of am I ready? And I think, a lot of personal and professional decisions, you can always find a reason to not be ready or not be prepared for something. And I think, as you mentioned, you have to look at just all of the variables at play, figure out, what have you done leading up to this to at least give yourself that foundation where you think that you are ready enough to go in there, and then be open-minded to realize you're going to continue to learn along the way. And as you had just alluded to, in a completely different structure than what you've ever been in. And you're probably going to tap into some clinical skills, some personality traits, and just some situations that you didn't even know that you were capable of because you've never been presented with those stimuli before. So, no, it was, when I heard the news of you going over there, it was very exciting, not only for you, but just everybody involved. And I think the first question that always came to my mind when you took that job, and really now that I'm and interacting through our sports residency with other people in pro sports and college sports, the question I always have is, well, what do you do? Like, you have so many people on staff between athletic trainers, strength conditioning coaches, physical therapists, probably massage therapists, nutritionists, maybe a sports psychologist. You have so many different medical and reconditioning, strength conditioning personnel in there. Would you mind shedding a little bit of light? And I know there's going to be differences and variances between organizations and different types of sports, but in your organization, with what you're able to provide on a macro level, how do you guys delineate roles and responsibilities? And then if you could just go into a little bit of, what does a typical day or a typical week look like for you? Whatever's the easiest way to convey that.
Yeah, that's a great question, because ultimately it comes down to that, it really is N=1 for any pro sports job, because even within the same league and the same sport, the design of the staffs are going to be different. And then the role that you serve based off your skill set and based off what the organization needs from you is going to be different. And that might change from month to month, day to day, season to season. So it comes down to a big piece of adaptability, and variety and skill set is really important. Then additionally, knowing how to play your role and how to be a really good teammate. I think those are pivotal skills that allow you to be adaptable no matter what pro sports environment you're in. As far as us, the logistics in the NBA are excellent in the fact that we have a very robust staff. We have, multiple people at every role, so that responsibilities are delegated pretty evenly across the roster of guys. So what you get from that is you get an opportunity to really truly be a specialist, in the sense that I'm going to own the plan of care for these number of players, to where I can really, dive into every element and be available, really around the clock for their needs, which is often necessary for the demands that come about 82 games a year. Additionally, I kind of need to be the one, managing communication with, the health status surrounding this player. So when it comes down to what's the role of the physical therapist in this environment, it comes down to really what's this definition of a performance therapist, which is what my title is. And it's something where we need to be able to span table to court. And we need to be able to span all elements of that, in the sense that, what we're doing on the table can influence how someone is moving on the court. What's being done in the weight room can influence how someone is performing and how someone's exhibiting their skill set on the court, not just in terms of availability, but in terms of performance and the athlete reaching their goals and being able to execute what the team is asking them to do and what the player wants to be able to do. So it comes down to owning, like I said, every element of their care, from injury history, reflecting and seeing what might be some risks or some, injury patterns they might be susceptible to in this coming season. How does their movement profile and strategies affect their ability to produce certain things that the coaches and the team are asking them to do? How am I, we're taking our information from a medical assessment standpoint, and then integrating that in with the performance department, our strength conditioning staff, and our sports science staff to create a narrative, to create a story around this player. Then we're having that same conversation with their development coach on the court, to understand how those things impact their ability to express what tactically the coaches want them to be able to do. So all these things kind of, we own our domains, but really you have to have a full ownership of how this bleeds, again, from table to court. So there's definitely like daily integration and handoffs where you have to be able to identify, this is my skill set. I own this domain. So I can own injuries. I can own manual therapy. I can own these specific types of, impairments or, solutions to those impairments versus like, here's what our strength coach is good at. And here's what they own, and being able to communicate and pass the baton and find the appropriate, menu and ways that you can interact with that individual and that problem set. So it's fluid. It's fluid on the situation. It's fluid on the player. It's fluid on the time of year, and whether it's a long-term rehab or a short-term or a healthy athlete. So like I said, coming back, it's adaptability, ability to be variable in your skill set, but also communicate and be a strong teammate, and knowing when it's your turn to step in and when it's your time to step back.
That's all good stuff. And my next question is more of a reflection question for you. Now that you have had a little bit of time in the NBA environment, what are some things that you have learned, either about the role itself or you individually? Maybe it's personality traits you didn't know you had, skill sets that you didn't know you had, or areas that you had opportunity for further development, or maybe the realization that, hey, I'm a pretty qualified individual and I belong here. But what were some realizations that you've had within your time in the NBA? And were there any adjustments that you had to make, either to your treatment style, to kind of your day-to-day work, almost like work-life balance or routine? But do you mind shedding a little bit of light on that?
Absolutely. And this could go on for several hours, because I think like anytime you have a job like this, an opportunity like this, like I've kind of said, it kind of like it challenges you to the core of what you do and what you believe, because it's just it's such a different setting. Going from, seeing multiple patients a day and having 2 visits a week in an outpatient model, the way you interact with an individual and just the way you strategize your plan of care is just completely and totally different. Like, obviously there is merging skill sets, but there's such a large, I guess, bandwidth of things that you don't necessarily get challenged with in an outpatient setting that you need to be able to express and do strategically in this professional sports world. So definite similarities where you need a really strong clinical skill set. You need strong diagnostic abilities. You need strong abilities to connect and relate to the individual working with. You need strong communication skills, both with other people in the profession and sports coaches and strength coaches, to be able to talk the language of each of those people and be able to talk the language of the athlete. So I think a lot of those basic ABCs of being a good clinician are vital. But on top of that, you need to be able to understand just the situational dynamics of professional sport. What are the different stresses and pressures involved with that? And then, like we mentioned, how does your role change based off of the dynamic of your staff and based off what's being asked of you? And how do I optimize those strengths while helping to optimize the strengths of others to help to maximize that player's plan of care and overall experience? I think on top of that, it's different managing just in general an in-season athlete, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and there was this question of well, what do you do when they're not injured? And I kind of chuckle, because it's a great question. It's something that to me is oh, this is the essence of what we do. And it's something where I'm not, we might have, hopefully we have no long-term rehabs during a year. Hopefully you have no major injuries with an individual. So really what you're doing is you're managing these day-to-day fluctuations. The way I think about it is you have 82 games challenging this individual's homeostasis, and it's going to push them out of their comfortable bandwidth. So in the weight room, you're trying to teach them to be more adaptable, to have more of a larger buffer zone in this homeostatic zone before they kind of quote unquote fall off a cliff. And medically, like what we're doing there and in the strength conditioning zone is trying to keep them within that, is trying to grow that bandwidth, but trying to keep them within that zone to help speed up recovery, to help identify any constraints they might have going into the season that might be something that pushes them over the cliff faster or decreases their bandwidth. And then monitoring those constraints to say, how is this stress of the season changing how their body moves? How is it changing their ability to adapt to stress and absorb stress and recover from stress, to ideally help them be more robust and resilient throughout the course of the season, as well as not allowing some of these new constraints that pop up from the stress of playing limit their ability to express certain movements or perform in the way they need to. So it's a day-to-day new evaluation. So the way someone has put it that I think is really eloquent is like, we talk about return to play being like, oh, an injury occurs and we got to get this athlete back to play. Like, no, every single day is a return to play. So if I have a back-to-back, if I play Tuesday and I got to turn around and play the next night on Wednesday, the second that game ends, I have a return to play. I got to get this athlete as close back to their performance homeostasis as I can, so that they are able to perform and also able to do this, safely, where the compiling stress of the season can be, ideally mitigated as much as possible, that it, doesn't increase our risk of injury or decrease performance.
No, that's a great, not analogy, but way of putting it. And I think we talk about rehab and recovery, and we tend to always think about long-term rehabs. And if you just look at the continuum of, in your case, a season or a career, you are going to have periods and times. You're going to have peaks and troughs where you're doing really, really well from a health standpoint, or where you need a lot of help and assistance and guidance. But then you're going to spend the majority of the time somewhere in between. And that doesn't mean that you're dismissive of that individual. You go to the physician or you go to a specialist when you have an emergent medical condition, but you also tend to go there for checkups, and you tend to go there for some sort of, annual or semi-annual or biannual basis to get workups done and to have conversation and a game plan as well. And that's kind of how I envision the in-season and also the off-season of the athletic calendar. And I think probably for you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe the easiest part of your job is when there is a definitive injury, because there's a typical playbook that you follow with that. There's traditional biological and medical healing time frame. There's accepted protocols and expectations with regards to prognostics for that injury. I think the hard part of your job is probably when people aren't quote unquote injured, or they have the kind of the micro doses of injuries that are happening throughout the season. And that injury that, quote, I'm doing air quotes right now, that injury you're dealing with might be a tough loss that happened at 10 o'clock at night, and then they got to get on a plane, fly across the country, get 2 hours of sleep, and then wake up and get ready to play a game the next day. And no, they didn't have an injury, but they had a disruption to their system that you need to deal with and figure out how do you mitigate the risk to put them in a position to perform well in the short term, but also the long term. And I admire you guys for your ability to work together as a team and appreciate what all of that looks like and how you delineate roles. And more importantly, how do you figure out the metrics, both objectively and subjectively, that you even care about in those different situations. And that's a whole nother episode in and of itself, is getting into the monitoring, the metrics of that. And I've just got one more question for you. And for anybody who is listening, and I'm sure we have a lot of people who are listening that are thinking, man, that's a pretty cool job. I would love to be in pro sports. Both you and I have been in that position as younger clinicians with aspirations to get there, and you're actually there now. So if you had to talk to your younger self or talk to a student or somebody earlier in their career who has aspirations with getting into pro sports, what type of advice or what type of guidance would you give them? Because I know that it's a little bit nuanced. It's not like somebody says, hey, I want to be a PT, and they reach out to me via email, and I say, oh, we'll stop by the clinic at 3 o'clock and hang out and shadow for a couple hours. People aren't just dropping by your facility and shadowing you to see a day in the life. What type of advice or what would you give to somebody who is thinks that they are interested in a good fit for pro sports?
Yeah, I would say first off, like number one is like just make sure you want to do this for the right reasons. I think there's like there's a lot of like it gets glamorized. It gets kind of put as on a pedestal. And like the biggest thing I'll say is like there's really cool opportunities and really great, unique experiences from it. But like just like any job, it's, you're doing hard work. You're sacrificing a lot of your personal life to do this. And it creates, lifestyle logistics, like I said, that are difficult to manage in many ways. So you have to understand, like, this is something I really want to commit this period of my life to. And I want to do this because of, this is the people I want to interact with. This is the experience I want to have. This is the ways I want to learn and skill sets I want to get pushed towards. Number two, make sure that like the skill set you're going to gain in this environment is what you're actually trying to optimize for. So again, coming back to our conversation about like, training stimulus, like I said, your first job should be more of this general physical preparation. It's going to put me in a situation where I can see a wide variety of individuals and kind of have the, ability to experiment and be safe to fail and kind of, gain repetitions in a safe and effective way. Versus in a professional sports environment, you're not really given that affordance. Like there's higher pressure, there's higher, more of a quick time demand. There's going to be less variety because, I'm not working with anybody under 6'5" right now. And they're all playing the same sports. The presentation is going to be similar. So if the stage you're in or what you're trying to optimize for as a clinician is general physical preparation, don't start doing, German volume training or start doing, dynamic effort work in your training program, because it's not going to be the best way for you to adapt. So make sure you have that foundation before you jump into a more specified role, and make sure that stimulus you're training for is the way you actually want to go in your career and the way you want to grow. So I think it's more than just, oh, this is so cool, I want to work with these people I see on TV. It's is this actually the right place for me to grow and the right way for me to express my skill set? And is this the right place and time in life for me to do this? So I think those are all really important. I always laugh about this because before I took this job, like I had multiple people try to, like, I guess, who are in this world try to talk me out of it. And I found myself doing that to other people because I think that's an important thing to know, because the last thing you'd want if we were going to bring someone onto our staff, or I was going to tell somebody to go take a job in this world, is to not understand the realities of it. So there's many things I miss about the clinic, and there's certain areas of my skill set that I think are atrophying by not being in the clinic. But there's certainly other places and skill sets I would not have ever gained, and certain other elements of, that are hypertrophying by being in this environment. So I think it's just understanding what you want, what stimulus is going to be right for you, and then what kind of lifestyle sacrifices or, lifestyle in general you think is going to work for you and your family and the people around you.
Anthony, that is some great advice. Definitely some things to consider for anybody who is interested in pro sports, and I would even say collegiate sports as well on some of the higher levels. So, Anthony, as always, love getting to talk with you. Appreciate you taking the time. For those listening, this is Anthony's first time on the podcast. It will not be his last. He, along with our other R2P Academy members, are going to be regularly reoccurring on this podcast. If you have any topics that you would like to hear him touch on based off of his experience or expertise, please let us know. Reach out via social media, via email. More than happy to entertain those questions as topics in the future. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun, and definitely look forward to doing it again and diving into some of the, more nuts and bolts of what we do.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or have been tuned in for multiple episodes, we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for listening.